Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more AIM Parenting live stream. And today's guest is our lovely Rachel Huffman. She's a mother for devoted carer to her youngest son and the founder of Maple Strawberry, a vibrant plant-based cafe and community hub in Fareham, a market town in the south of England.
She's also a home educator, a birth doula, and someone deeply committed to rebuilding the kind of safe, empowering support systems that every person deserves. Rachel holds space for those who feel like they fall through the cracks, and she does it with fierce love and creativity. Rachel, welcome. We've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is great.
Yay. It's so good to see you, Rachel. And it's good to see you here now with us in the live stream. As you know, like we've been doing a few things at your cafe. So it's lovely to be able for you to share your story with everyone. So you said that your work is about rebuilding what should have existed in the first place, right? So like what gaps were you seeing in your own life or community that led you to take action?
Oh gosh, so many. That's a really good question. As a parent, like there are just so many gaps. So I don't even know where to start. I guess we can start with the very early days, which is obviously, we'll talk later about my work as a birth doula. But right from the beginning, I found like during pregnancy, a lack of support, a lack of understanding, and then it just continued on through having my children. I didn't know when I first had my children that they were actually neurodiverse, and I didn't even know what that meant. So my children, my eldest is coming up 21 and my second is coming up 19, and there are 4. So they were neurodiverse and I didn't know anything about it, and I was experiencing difficulties with parenting that come along that are actually normal to neurodiverse parenting, and I had no idea what was going on. My parenting just wasn't fitting into the box of like what should be happening. My children one wasn't eating and one wasn't sleeping, and I was like, my basic job here as a parent is to make sure you guys eat and sleep. What is going wrong here? And so that's where I sort of began realizing what the gaps were. But it wasn't until like a long time later that I was actually able to look back, because it was so chaotic, like living through that, to look back and see what those gaps were and what needed to be done to fill them. And I'm still working on what needs to be done, really. So
yeah. I love it how you like one of your biggest commitments is to actually just fill these gaps. And absolutely. I think that is why like we connect so much with you, because we are also here like filling the gaps.
Absolutely.
And yes, and like you as a parent and we like as educators, we also like weren't told, like how to, even like when it comes to dealing with neurodivergent children. It's like back in the days, like when I was beginning my career, no one would even mention that. So like, let alone giving you training for you to understand, for you to cope with it, for you to support them, for you to even identify. So yes. You can imagine like as a mom, not being able to, like cater to their own children, the basic needs of eating and sleeping. I can imagine how painful it must have been to you, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that sense of, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but like a sense of failure you must have felt in some ways when actually it wasn't your fault at all. You just weren't given the information, the knowledge, the skills.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've read now, like as having been through it, I've read now that early intervention makes such a huge difference. But there is no early intervention. And this is what I found, like my children, my older 2, weren't even diagnosed until they were 9 and 11 years old. So to not have any early intervention and not just no understanding of what the problems were, and a lot of things that a lot of parents will identify here with is masking. So when you do have a child who is neurodivergent and they go to a social setting, they might not display like any of the issues that you're experiencing at home. So when your child comes home and does all of these behaviors and you go to the school and say, well, we had this problem, or nursery, we said we're having this problem at home, and they say, oh no, not this child, they're so sweet, they would never do that. And you just feel so invalidated, not heard, and it's
dismissed, right?
Dismissed. Yeah. Totally. Totally. And it's not even the fault of, you know, the educator, because they're there and they're just not seeing what you're talking about. And I can believe it, because I could see even now, my daughter being 19, and I think that she has had probably the most struggles, except for my little boy who's completely nonverbal, but her struggles were in school. And you know, you wouldn't have been able to tell, because she's so sweet and so lovely. But now she will express herself and she will flounce out of class and have a meltdown. And because she now understands like about her condition, she understands how to manage herself, and her teachers are able to accept the fact that she will go out of class, but she'll gather herself together and she will come back, and she's extremely determined to achieve her goals. So being that she can do that as part of her coping mechanism has meant that she's been able to stay in college, which is what she wanted to do. So
that's incredible.
And
That's
not only in college, right, Rachel, but like she doesn't even live with you.
She's staying at her grandparents at the moment during term time, because we did all just relocate. And she decided that she didn't want to relocate. She had a place in college here with us where we live, and she was like, no, I want to stay with my friends, which was a massive decision. And she was 18, so we were like, okay, that's
very inspiring.
And I was wondering, Rachel, how did you feel when you finally got the diagnosis for your children?
Yeah, it's such like the first one was, even though I knew from the preparation that I'd done for the assessment, because it took about 2 to 3 years wait to get the assessment.
It's a lengthy process, isn't it?
It was such a lengthy process, and I was waiting for this assessment, and I just knew what the outcome was going to be, because actually a teacher had taken me aside and told me. So she was like, I can't diagnose you, but you need to start this pathway. And so I had a chance to process all of this, and it was still like, it still hit me in that moment when my son was out of the room and it was me and his dad sitting in the room, and they said, your son has autism. It was just like, but then at the same time, it was a relief as well, because it was like, okay, so everything that I have, you know, read about and understood and been dealing with my child, it's validated. It's a real thing. I haven't been imagining what's going on here. And for him, they said that they would have diagnosed him Asperger's, but that they actually don't diagnose Asperger's anymore. They didn't at the time or whatever. So his condition was coming under autism spectrum disorder, which in a way is validating, in a way is just kind of vague as well. So it almost
very vague.
So it almost it requires you, the parent, to really get on board and do a lot of research, a lot of understanding, and a lot of fighting for your child. It really does.
And I know you homeschool your children. So at what point in this journey did you decide to take them out of the traditional system, and what have you sort of learned through the whole homeschooling way of educating?
Yeah, so I'm glad you used the word educating, because I definitely educate, not homeschool, and I can talk about the differences in that all day long. Yes, so it's very different. It's a very relaxed approach. We do not sit from 9 till 3 at the kitchen table and do worksheets. Like, we just don't work like that at all. It wasn't my intention to home educate at all. My children went to school. It was a teacher that obviously flagged up that there was autism that I had no idea about. But my son, even though like he didn't want to go to school at all, and he had to be peeled off of me every morning, crying, screaming, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to have to go through this again with the second one. And guess what? I had to go through it all again with the second one. And it wasn't because they didn't actually enjoy the school environment, because both of them quite did, because my son wasn't very social, but he was really academic, so he liked sitting in class and learning. And my daughter liked meeting people and chatting to people and just being dressing up and doing all of the things. So they both enjoyed aspects of it, but they didn't want to go because it was too much for them. They were exhausted. I was bringing home my 4-year-old, because he started school at 4. They're both summer birthdays, and he started school at 4 years and 3 weeks old, and I had to bring him home in the buggy because he couldn't even walk. He was just too exhausted, and like he'd only been doing 4 days at nursery, and I just didn't know how he'd cope with going. He'd had Wednesdays off, so he'd been used to like 2 days and a gap and 2 days, and when it was 5 days, it was just too much. And we had all of this crying and screaming, and I just struggled to get them out of the door. We would be late because at the last minute one of them would shut themselves in the bathroom, and this went on right through to the end of secondary school. So this wasn't a short-term problem. And
it wasn't because they were settling in, right?
It wasn't a settling in issue. No, it never really ended. But when my daughter got to, I think she was about year 3, she's about 8 years old, she was, not only was she autistic, and I could see, like, I was learning, in the process of learning about what was going on. And even my son, because I was teaching him about it, like, I was like, oh, well, you maybe have this condition, and this is what it's all about, and this is how you relate to the world, and this is how other people relate to the world. And he was, because it was a learning journey, he quite enjoyed that. So we were going through that. And he said to me, because my daughter, who was 8, had only just started sleeping through the night, she would stand and scream with her eyes open through the night, and people didn't believe it because it was so extreme. Like, there was just nothing, no one ever talked about this. How could this be? Everybody's child sleeps through the night, not mine. And he said, he actually brought the book to me. It was Autism for Dummies or something like that the school had recommended we go and get. He brought me the book, showed me the page and said, Mummy, Beanie, we call her Beanie, Beanie also has autism. Look at this behaviour. So he was about 9 years old and brought me the book and told me this, and just said, look, we need to read the book for Beanie. And he took my little one, who was only little at the time, he put her to bed. So he was about 7 or 8 years old himself, or maybe 9. And he's putting her to bed while I dealt with Beanie, who was screaming and she didn't want to go to bed. And I had told the school, she's tired, she's having these problems. But not only did she have those problems, she also had glue ear, which led to a bunch of grommet surgeries, which led to permanent hearing damage. So she was then permanently hearing impaired. So when I went to the school continuously with all of these issues, they said, well, this behaviour that you're describing is actually consistent with hearing loss. So we're going to go with that being the issue. And we're not going to give her any one-to-one, but she can sit with another boy in the classes one-to-one. And that person will ensure that she can hear the instructions. And I thought, okay, well, that's something. But
yeah, it's a small win, isn't it?
So but it just wasn't. It wasn't ensuring that she was follow it. Like, she wasn't not just following because she couldn't hear. There was more to the problem. There was more.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
There was some overwhelm, and sometimes, like, when she first got her grommets, she went into overwhelm because she could hear too much, and then she couldn't cope with that constant stimulation. But as I said, at this point, I'm still even learning what autism is. I'm still going through the process. I'm going through the process with her brother, and it came to a point where there was so much aggro trying to get her to school, and she wouldn't get dressed, and she wouldn't do this, and she wouldn't do that. And I've noticed that she didn't realize that 5 days a week was school. So we'd put out the uniform, it would hang up the night before, so she knew that she was supposed to get dressed in the morning. This was supposed to happen. This was the order of the day. And she'd look at me and she'd go, what school again? I'd be like, it's Tuesday. You've got 5 days of school, and this wasn't going in. And I was like, something is really wrong. I don't even know what's going on. So I requested a meeting with the school, and I said, I'm thinking about taking her and home educating her. And they said, oh, no, she's doing fine. But over the summer, I really thought about it and was like, you know what? I'm going to take her out and just see what home education can even do for her. So I decided to take her out, and then I sent in the letter, but I sent my son into school that first day. And I think my other daughter was in nursery at this point, and I came home before I spoke to the teachers before I came home, and they were like, well, actually, we think this is best because we can't do anything with her. And I was like, all of this time you told me everything was okay. And I was like, well, what is the problem? They said, here are all of her books. And they showed me her books, her exercise books, and they were empty. There was nothing in her books. And I said, what has been going on? And they said, we can't get her to comply. We say, Beanie, have you got your pencil out? Will you get your pencil out? And she goes, no. And that was that. And they didn't think to tell me that there was this kind of, disparaged, whatever, I don't know my words now, but it wasn't working out anyway. And so when I took her out of formal school, the first thing I did, which is a lot of home educators do, is did exactly try and sit her down at the table from 9 till 3 and do worksheets and look at the curriculum and go over what exactly she should be doing. And as I started this, I was met with so much resistance. She was furious. She did not want to learn. There was dining chairs flying across my room. She was not having any of it. And I was like, I just don't even know what to do. She won't read, even though she can read. I didn't know what to do with her. So I went, right, okay, we'll just go out in nature and just chill and whatever. And then I sort of read around other home educators what they were doing if they came across this, and they did. And it was like a de-schooling process, because they had to get out of the mindset of education was this one thing and you have to sit still and do this. And she had to come through all of this process till she was ready. And so in the meantime, all that I did with her was whatever she wanted to do. So she got into baking, and she baked and baked and baked. She learned how to use recipes. She learned how to measure things. And I noticed over the first couple of months, when she was making food, she was baking and using the oven independently, about 8 or 9 years old. And I realized the first time when she didn't say, "Mummy, can you check the cakes?" She went, "Oh, I think these need a few more minutes." And I realized the confidence that she had got her own, she'd got her sort of eagerness to learn, and it had come back, and her confidence was coming back. And all I did as well with her was just read to her, and she would allow me that. So we read and we read and we read everything under the sun. We read the curriculum books that were for her age, and we started going up reading ages. And in the end, we're reading the classics. And she said, "Oh, Mummy, I love The Secret Garden. I want to learn how to garden." So the next thing we're doing, we're planting gardens. She's all into, anything outside. We got zoo passes. She wanted to learn about animals. And it was just, the growth was incredible. But the real kicker, I think, was when she sent me a reel. She said, "Mummy, I want you to put this on your Instagram," and it's up there now still.
It's amazing.
It was her lying on her bed in front of the mirror, and she was reading and reading and reading. She said, "I'd done a time lapse. I was reading for hours, Mummy." And it's her, and because she is ADHD and autism, she's upside down, her feet are in the air, then the book's this way, then it's that way, and you can just see all the movement and her tapping her feet and moving her hands, but it doesn't matter because she's just so engrossed in her story. And she said, "Mummy, no one believes that I would read for fun, but look what I'm doing." And that was it.
I just love that, because as you know, Lucy and I are both Montessori educators. We have a Montessori background, and it's like you're following the child.
Literally following the child.
Yeah. And it's like, as you say, she got into gardening, you went into the garden, and I think every child would benefit from that type of, because you're basically, once a child's interested and curious, they are wired to learn. Very few children can sit behind a desk from 10 till 3 and come away still with that kind of love of learning. And that's what you've instilled in your daughter, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it's so much of, because obviously whenever we talk about Montessori, is a prepared environment, the prepared adult, and then the normalized child. I know it's normalized stuff sounds very old fashioned, but it's basically the child who is not presenting any big issues, any behavior issues, because all of their needs are being met. And you can clearly see that when she was being forced into sitting down, studying, doing workbooks, and reading whenever she wasn't ready or eager to do so, she wasn't at her normalized state of mind. But then once you said, "You know what, I'll just follow her, because there's no way I can push it," and you are actually following her nature, you're not going against her nature, that's when all of that child's needs start being met. So she wants to bake, she'll bake, and there's so much that she can learn through baking.
Yeah.
Not just baking itself, but it's your environment is allowing her to flourish, is allowing her to explore, and you, as the prepare adults, because you've done your homework, you've read all the books, right? You understood her diagnosis. You know now you can actually name it, even if it feels a bit too subjective, a bit too broad, but at least you've got something to work with.
Yeah.
So your expectations change, and then the way that you are going to deal with your child also changes. And you can tell what a huge difference.
Yeah, it's really, really inspiring. And did you find that you met many other parents sort of on this journey? And that kind of leads me to my question about your wonderful sounding. And I am going to come and visit you because I'm not that far away. I'm based in Winchester. Your wonderful cafe, Maple Strawberry. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that acts as a kind of community hub for perhaps other people who are kind of doing a similar thing to you?
Yeah, I think when I started the journey, it was quite lonely. I did have a friend in the States that was doing home ed as well, but she was doing it really, really differently. She was homeschooling and she was kind of using the curriculum, and it was very, very structured. And I just didn't, although I did share some materials with her, it didn't really fit our style, although we did use them, not in the time frame that she was using them, and not the kind of same way. We did do some workbooks and we did actually get to doing maths and all these kinds of things, but it was all fit into the times that were right for us. So it was a very different kind of experience, and I wanted, and this goes back to a dream that I had a long time ago, was I just wanted a space where parents could go and they could feel like they could take their children, because something going back, I'm sorry, I'm sort of jumping back and forth across my story.
We're loving it.
But going back to when my children were very little, I found that 5 o'clock was just a dreadful time, and lots of us where I lived at the time, I lived in Essex, and we were on our own until like 7 or 8 at night, because that's when the commuters started coming back. So we'd have small children like all day long, and of course mine were creating more chaos and havoc than others. And by 5 o'clock we were all just exhausted, and I just was envisioning in my head like a space where I could go and just walk in with my children and know that they were going to have something like nutritious, and it didn't have to be, nobody would care if they threw it on the floor, because my children probably would, or one of them would. But it would just be a space where I felt welcome. I didn't feel like I could walk into a cafe or a restaurant at that kind of time of night. And also I didn't really want anything for me yet, because I was going to wait and eat with my partner when he got home. So I was just like, I just need somewhere to be to feed them, because I don't want to face this on my own. And a lot of time that I did have a friend that we used to do dinners together a lot when they were really little, which made a massive difference. But that community was so missing, and I hear it time and time again from parents who are like, just exhausted and isolated as well, because there's not. I had a friend in Mallorca, and I went out to stay with her, and when she got overwhelmed at night, she would walk down to the square and there'd just be parents everywhere, and the children would just run. They had their bikes out and they would go over. If they went near the road, somebody's parent would push them back. Like, it just wasn't an issue, and there was so much love and community and sharing, and I just wasn't seeing that where we lived at all. And I had this vision that there would be a place one day that parents would just feel like they could walk in, they didn't have to do their hair, they could just, come with their children screaming and all of this. So that was a vision I had a really long time ago, and nothing ever really came of it. And it wasn't until we were relocating to Hampshire, and I'll just add in about my little boy. So a couple of years ago, everything kind of went wrong for us, and our support network upped and came to Hampshire. So we, at the time, were also realizing that our son was regressing, and it was such a hard process to watch, because he was developing as normal, and he was interacting. There was eye contact, there was back and forth noises, babble, everything was going really well. And then all of a sudden he just disappeared, and it was dreadful. It was awful to watch. And by Sophie's 1 year check, like, he was hitting all of his milestones. By his 2 year check, he hit nothing at all. He didn't even recognize us. Like, he showed, or he might have done, but he showed no sign of it. And we were wondering if he was blind, deaf, anything. We just couldn't figure out what was going on with him. in his own little world. So we decided as a family that we were going to relocate to be near our support network as well, and that we were now going to take ourselves out of the system completely and just run our own business as a family, because we wanted to work around so that one of us could be with him all the time, because he has that much needs. So with his autism, like, he's completely non-verbal. Still, he's not potty trained at 5.5. It's a lot of work. And so this is a different level again. So all three of my autistic children are completely different with their needs. They're just so different, because my other two were verbal, but had all of these other issues. And the only thing that there's just been no support. We had a really, really great group back in Essex that would let us come in, and they would move all of the small toys, because he also has picker, so he puts everything in his mouth and you don't know if he's going to swallow it or not. They'd move all of the small toys up, and they'd smile and they'd sing to him and they'd sign to him, and he loved going, even though he completely ignored absolutely everyone. He loved it. And then that closed down. And then I was on a team of people that were trying to like reopen this and get funds, and it all just went pear-shaped, and I don't really know what happened in the end of that, but we were looking for something similar here, and we just found that there was just so little support. Just no, even one of the groups that we went to, we didn't feel like we were a good fit for the group, because my son was too chaotic and couldn't cope with normal sort of group restrictions, and he wanted to run off and do this and do that, and it just doesn't suit him. So I forgot the question now, and I've gone right off track.
No worries. It was just really about you know, when you were homeschooling, did you kind of feel that there was this lack of support? And you've obviously set up this incredible space, Maple Strawberry, and no, I was just asking you about that. And
yes, sorry, I've gone right off there. So when I saw the cafe, I was like, I can see this being like a hub for parents to come into to bring their children. There's lots of space. You can have wheelchairs in there, you can have buggies in there, and it's really similar to actually Laura's vision as well. I was watching back on her talk, and it's fantastic what she's doing, and I thought perhaps this could be a space for home educators as well, to just come and sit quietly. If you've got perhaps a teenager who's not coping with school, then come and sit quietly with their books or without, or play a board game, or just chill out with their parents, or their parents can do work. Like, all of these things were going through my head. And what has happened since I've gotten there is the story I hear time and time and time again. I have parents come in and say, my child is not coping with school and I don't know what to do. Is home educating an option? And we end up talking about this in there. So we've had like loads and loads of conversations. And the other people who come in all the time, like you guys are educators, and they're saying they've left education and they are starting up small tutor groups or small groups, and they're looking for the home educating community to come and join us and do small group activities, because they were left. And the story, I'm sorry to say, because, you know, I don't really want to have to share this, but time and time again, what teachers are telling me is that they were left with children who are like my son in mainstream education, which is what I was told to do with him. I was told, put him into mainstream. And he can't even talk, and he runs away and he eats everything. And I'm like, this is madness. But the teachers were telling me that they would have 5 or 6 children like my son who couldn't even get dressed before school. So came in their pajamas, and they were expected to dress the children. They were expected to stop them from harming themselves or other children at all times, and educate the rest of the class. And sometimes, every time, the teachers that come and tell me in the cafe cry, because they were so stressed by what they were dealing with. And so
it's the lack of support, it's the wrong environment, it's not understanding. I'm not telling this about the teachers, but it's the system, right? It's the system forcing these children. Because, Rachel, to be very honest, it's like the mainstream school system doesn't work for, well, any child. You know, it's very, very difficult. Even if your child wasn't neurodivergent, these children, they still suffer because it's against their nature, having to sit down for X amount of hours, or like having to do all of these worksheets. And I know because like I used to be one of these teachers in the mainstream school system as well before I entered the Montessori world. And it's all about checking boxes. You have to check all the boxes. And remember that folder that you said that your child's folder was empty at the end of the year? Oh God, that folder has to be full. And in order for that folder to be full, you just have to do activity after activity with that child. And it's forceful.
Yeah.
It is forceful. Obviously, like children who are not neurodivergent, they respond to it a bit more easily, but it's still, maybe I'm being a bit too radical, but it's still very disrespectful towards the child, towards the family. But it's the system, isn't it? And I think
That's
that
right.
teachers, they leave because they cannot fight the system. I know that was why I left.
Yeah. And I think you have, I mean, I never wanted to be a mainstream teacher. I was just really pulled in by the Montessori philosophy, by the very fact that you weren't a teacher, you were more of a guide and a coach. And, you were there to sort of, allow the child to be free within a certain structure,
within boundaries,
but I know a lot of teachers go into education with this incredible kind of vision of what they hope it's going to be like. And I think time and time again, as you say, it's dashed and they're kind of flailing, going help,
And I think that here in the UK, just like in Brazil, although like obviously like there's so many so-called Montessori nurseries, some of them are actually, like they do follow like the authentic methods. Others, they're more like the name. They have like a pink tower sitting on it, and then they call themselves Montessori. So obviously, because it's not trademarked, people can just do whatever they want. But here in the UK, we know, again, like in Brazil is the same, Montessori education usually just stays within the nursery setting. It stays within the preschool age, 3 to 6. That's mainly what you're going to see out there. So even like if you go like, oh no, like I'm 100% Montessorian, like I'm in this because I really believe in the methods. But then it's almost like that you're going to take that child and give them to the mainstream education system, and things are, as you said, like like people who fall through the cracks. That child, it's just going to fall through the cracks again, because you had that chance, like from 3 to 6 or like 0 to 6, you gave them everything that they needed, but then like they are off to the mainstream world, to the mainstream education world. Then what? It kind of like stops, and then it's even more shocking for them, I think.
It is a shock, and I think that's, you've hit the nail on the head, because I think year one, even because reception is quite playful, or it certainly was.
But then year one is like, bam.
It's such a shock, and I think that's where other parents as well start to see problems with their really, really bright children that they have nurtured and that they've done Montessori, or they've done some sort of, really gentle parenting like early on, and then they've come to year one where they have to sit down all day, and this is where we get like children coming home and just creating problems, and parents are exhausted and they just don't even know what what's hit them or what's happened to their child. And I feel like you get that in year one, I feel like you get it again in juniors, and I feel like you get it again in secondary school. It's and you can see your child going down this trajectory, and it's like, what do we need to do? So all of my children I've taken out at various times, except for my eldest. He went right through, because despite the fact that he didn't want to go, he was more led by structure and academics. So I left him in, whether I don't know whether he's very happy that I did, but he chose to go on to college and university. So obviously he appreciates that structure. Whereas the others I've taken out, Beanie has been in and out at various points, and my next daughter, who's 14, is now out. She came out when she was about 8 as well, and it was the same thing. It was that disillusionment when she was so excited about school, loved it. She is not neurodiverse for all intents and purposes. We know everybody's a little bit on the scale, aren't they? But she doesn't have any diagnosis. But just disappointment at when we had to sit down all day, and it wasn't fun.
Forced, right? It's just being forced. It's just something that you like, I'm not ready for it. And there's so many ways for us to learn. It doesn't have to happen at a desk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And so going back to your cafe, I just had a quick look at your website. So you offer like parenting workshops and kind of creative activities and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of, what else kind of goes on there, and and do you have like evening sessions and?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like, as well, as a parent and a business owner, I felt it was really important to like network with other parents who are business owners as well, because we are all trying to fit this all in. There's other parents doing what I'm doing, taking their children out, and they want to sell. Maybe they want to sell their crafts or their makes that they do. There's teachers who want to teach courses or workshops together with teenagers or with parents as well. So people can like just book up the space and use it for their pop-ups, which is really what I envision the place going forward, as a community pop-up centre where people can share their skills or can teach their skills or can showcase their business, what they've been doing whilst they've been raising children, perhaps in the background. And the children as well, like I've seen that we haven't been along to any, but they have some little entrepreneurship days where the home ed children show what they've made throughout the year as well, and they can sell it on little sales and stores. And I just see that as being the heart really of my space, is to have people showing up and showing what they do in the community. Just all as one, really.
And I must say, it's such a welcoming space. It's so cozy because it's quite small. So it's very welcoming. It's full of crafts. So you can see that there's like people who are local to the area who are selling their crafts. And then they also run workshops. And there's just these quiet little spaces. And it just feels like home. It has a homely feel to it, and like the coffee is amazing, the cakes are amazing, and everything is plant-based. I mean, like, how can you go wrong with that?
Well, that came from.
I'm wearing like these earrings.
Yes. Oh yeah, you're wearing them.
Let me try and show this to you guys. I don't know if you guys can see.
Oh, they're gorgeous. They are so pretty.
They're so pretty, and it's like nothing at the cafe is expensive.
So someone made them, did they?
It's a local mum. Yeah. She's a doula.
Beautiful. Yeah. Should we give her a shout out? What's her name?
We can. Her name is Sam, and her jewelry is called Inspire.
Oh, hi Sam.
Her name is so lovely. Hi Sam.
Oh, Sydney.
It sounds like such a a beautiful space. And tell me, like,
in it easily.
I know, and I just really want to touch on this because I think it's such a it's something so that I don't know a lot about, but I know you are also a doula, and
yes.
And I know we were having a chat about it backstage, and I one of the questions that came up is like, what is the main difference between a midwife and a doula?
Okay, so again, like where we've spoken about things being like parenting and community, doula is a community support. We are not medical at all. So this is what I've done, and it's been like, it all sort of weaves into one story, because what I wanted to do while I had small children, and because they were so needy, I wanted to be around them. So I wanted to do a job that I could do whilst raising my children at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I found out about supporting other mums during birth, and it was something that really fit with me. I have a whole long story as to why that worked really well for me, and I set myself up as a birth doula, and then I was able to support people on the one-off, like maybe once a month, and then be around my children the rest of the time as well. So it fit in really well, and it's something I've been doing now for 14 years. And supporting mums again, because again with the way that our appointments are, like, we don't have time to ask all of the questions that we want to, and not all of our questions as parents are medical. So where do we get support from? sometimes our own mums, especially during birth and also in parenting, have completely different ideas. Like we might have parents who say, well, I did it one way and I was fine. But sometimes, like for us, we need to learn our own way, and we might have neurodiverse children, or we might even be neurodiverse ourselves. And how do we navigate all of these choices? And do we even know what our choices are? So my biggest, the most important thing to me as a doula and as a parent supporter now is to open parents up to what their choices are, because we often don't know. We don't even know there is a choice. We get sort of pushed here, try this, try that, try mainstream, try school, and it's not working, and then we don't know what to do. And so my point is to educate parents and get us all to know, like, what are our choices? What can we do before it all goes into crisis? Because a lot of our support work only happens after crisis has occurred, and that's too late.
Absolutely.
Here it takes a crisis for you to get the care that you need, right?
Yes.
It's really, really difficult for you to have like just preventative care. And for you to just, it's like, hey, you know what? It almost feels here that this is something that I've been, like just thinking about like a lot. It's like parents, or like even people who come to me like through my business, they only come to me, or usually when they are at the moment of crisis. But when it's still brewing, when it's still growing, it's like they always feel like, no, I can handle it. I can just keep on, keep on coping with it. But then it takes the crisis. It takes the crisis for them to take action. And unfortunately, I think this is such it's part of the human nature, isn't it? For us to take that shift into, like changing careers, or like for you to create something new. It's look at how maple strawberry was created. Right?
Yeah, that's it. And it is about evolving, isn't it? It's looking at your circumstances and what are, there's going to be things that come up for you that you're not going to expect. And how are you going to move through this? Like, yes, you might need to stay. You may have to be a 2-parent income home because of circumstances, but then how are you going to adapt your life? Maybe you need to move. Maybe you need to downsize. There's all kinds of radical options that we just don't even realize are a thing. And like for me, it was to be self-employed so that I could actually be around these children, because they needed constant support. And I didn't even know why they needed that support at the time. But now looking back, I can see where all of these choices came from.
And knowledge is power, isn't it? Because and that's the thing. I think that's the beauty of what you've been doing, Rachel, is you're just informing people. You're letting them know. It's like, hey, this information is really useful. It's really useful to you. Just take it, and then they actually have the power of choice.
Exactly.
And just on another note, because it's so clear, Rachel, that you are such a giver. You care for so many people, and I'm just wondering, how do you take care of yourself? How do you not burn out? How do you support your needs? Because I think that's so important.
It is, and it's about building a support network around you. So I will call on people like Lucy and say, my house is chaos, or what can I do? And you might not have the family support. I'm lucky because I do have family support, but not everyone has family support. And there have been times in my life where I haven't had any. So it's creating your own support network. That's the first and most important thing that you can do, because once you have that support network in place, then you can take time, and then you can, work out what it is that you need. Because when we are in the thick of it, any kind of like pregnancy onwards and parenting neurodiverse children, there is no time to think about it. There is no time at all. No. So it is.
So Rachel, on that note, is there like any advice that you would give parents out there to have like this support network? Because it comes to my mind, it's like, just put yourself out there, right? Just show up, meet people, say hello, connect, right?
It It's so important because we have lost that skill. We have lost the skill. And I found it's better here where we live in Hampshire now, actually, to where it was in Essex. Like, you didn't talk to anyone in the shop. You didn't do any of that. And here in Hampshire, I feel like people walk into the cafe and they just want a bit of therapy. They want to
say hello, and yes,
they want to have a chat.
They want to connect. Yeah.
They want to connect. And what's really lovely is where our tables are close together as well. Sometimes it all just becomes one big conversation. Everybody's listening, everybody's getting involved. And I feel like that's what we need to be doing. We need to have local spaces. I love what Lucy's doing, because she's talking about local hubs and walking in and recognizing each other, and then just being able to have a quick chat. Or, I mean, we even talked yesterday, didn't we, Lucy, about people being able to knock on their neighbours' doors, or people in the community, knowing someone in your community is a parent or is isolated or is struggling, and just knocking on the door and just saying, hi, how are you doing? You don't have to walk in and check what's going on in their family or in their life, but it's just about being, oh, I'm here if you need anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that makes so much. It's a lifeline.
Yeah.
It always starts with hello, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so powerful.
Oh, well, Rachel, I think, we are coming up to sort of our 45-minute mark, which is pretty good going. So
it's really
is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Just one short thing is that, as well as with my doula work, I have got my own antenatal class which is going on at the moment, and while I was writing it, because I like to have a lot of tabs open in my head at once, I thought this kind of course would be really good to have for parents who have children with neurodiverse or going through the diagnosis process. So I'm actually working on, and it's not live yet or anything like that, so it's all just a work in process at the moment, but I'm working on a series of workshops that parents can come along to, and exactly that, they come in, they feel seen and feel heard, and they can just talk about what's going on for them and get some real world kind of ideas, rather than a leaflet of advice that goes straight out the window.
Downloadable PDF, which is what they do all the time. It's like, just download the PDF, you should be fine.
And meet others, obviously, that are all going through a similar time. So, wow, that sounds so valuable. And is that going to be happening at your cafe?
That's happening at Maple Strawberry, and the plan is to get some of the events hosted before the summer holidays, so that parents who are thinking, how on earth am I going to get through 6 weeks of having my child at home, are going to have some really important connections and maybe some tools as well for how they're going to get through. So that's the plan at the moment.
So where can people connect with you, Rachel? Where can people find you, apart from, obviously, we have a global audience. So what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Creative Birth Doula on Instagram. But also, if you want to know about the cafe, it's maplestrawberry.com. That's all that it is. So have a look. You can find all of the events that are going on there, and you can link to all of the other things that I do on there as well.
Fantastic. I can imagine there are some people probably listening in that are thinking, there's nowhere like that in my area. I would love to set something like that up. So
I
really do hope this idea can spread, Rachel. You're such a visionary for doing it. And again, it's just like being very down to earth. It's being very community driven, and just really just going back to, I think it's going back to the basics. Human beings connecting with each other, finding support instead of just, resorting to, a PDF.
A downloadable PDF.
Absolutely.
You don't need to resort to a PDF. There's humans who are willing to help, right? But thank you so much for sharing your story, Rachel.
It's been so lovely to hear all your you've been, you're a complete inspiration, Rachel. So thank you so much for coming and chatting with us at AIM Parenting, and we'll have to have you back at some point as well.
Amazing. Thank you. It's been great.
Thanks very much. Well, everyone, this is it for today. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So have a great one. Take care, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye.